with this one. This came out January 28th. This is Trump nominates U.S. prosecutor as top national fraud investigator. So we saw a report come out. This was about a month ago, I think, roughly. Me and figuring out when the times and dates, not good. But we talked about this roughly a month ago, where J.D. Vance came out and said that they were going to hire an independent fraud investigator after the Minneapolis thing that will only answer to Trump and J.D. Vance. And they went and nominated one. Says Trump on Wednesday announced the nomination of a veteran federal prosecutor to lead a new Justice Department unit focused on fraud as the administration looks to refocus attention on the justification for its immigration crackdown in Minnesota that has gone increasingly unpopular. Just an update for you guys. Zero arrests. 0 charges, 0 convictions with the entire Minnesota daycare fraud. 0. Just to add a little bit more on to that, not taking it further from fraud. No Democrats have been arrested, charged, or convicted. No instigators have been arrested, charged, or convicted. All the cases that the Department of Justice has brought forth against people like Adam Schiff and Lolita James and Comey and all that stuff, nothing. 0 arrests, charges, or convictions against anybody who has appeared in the Epstein files. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Now, I'm not saying this to be critical. I'm not saying this because I'm surprised or anything. I'm saying this because it's all a lie. It's all a club. It's all for show. They're not doing anything because they're not supposed to. It's the same song and dance that the left-right has given us for decades. And big bad Trump coming in, claiming he's going to do all these things, and MAGA saying, finally we got somebody in there that's going to do something, has produced the exact same thing that every other administration has done. Nothing. So if you're still holding on to that, smack yourself in the face and get with the program. It ain't happening. This is Trump in a post on Truth Social platform nominated Colin McDonald as Assistant Attorney General for National Fraud Enforcement, a role that requires Senate approval. My administration has uncovered fraud schemes in states like Minnesota and California, where these thieves have stolen hundreds of billions of tax dollars, the president said. What about you, dude? I mean, look at how much fraud and corruption that I've revealed about you. He needs to be sent after you. How about one of the biggest scams, one of the biggest scammers and fraudsters in the entire United States is actually in Texas. Why don't you go after him? No, you don't want to do that because Texas is on your side. Can't do that now. So what this isn't referred to, because it says Vance, this was earlier, it says Vance says new anti-fraud prosecutor will report to the White House. This is what our initial news that we got a month ago about. It says Trump and his allies have been highlighting instances of fraud in social service programs like Minnesota and other Democratic-led states. Of course, it's the political game. But the administration's aggressive immigration enforcement campaign in Minneapolis and the deaths of 2 citizens in confrontations with federal officers have undermined that messaging. Trump indicated he'll direct the new fraud czar. It's so funny that we have adopted a Russian term with our government. We'll get to that just a little bit later. To target Democratic-controlled states like Minnesota and California, creating a potential new battle line as midterm elections approach. Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters earlier this month about the position. Vance added that the official would be supervised not by the Justice Department, but by Trump and himself, a highly unusual arrangement. Why is that? Because he's going to be one of their foot soldiers that they're going to use that answer directly to them. And when I saw that, I started looking around, and I came across this. The Justice Department had 36 lawyers fighting corruption full time. Under Trump, it's down to 2. Public integrity section is the latest casualty in the administration's attacks on Nixon-era good government reforms. This was September of last year. Jump down, it says all the lawyers in the Justice Department's public integrity section have either quit under pressure, resigned in protest, or have been detailed to other matters across the nation, according to several sources who spoke with Notice. The section has also lost all but one of more than a dozen paralegals. To me, it just screams that public corruption cases are no longer a priority of Department of Justice, said Andrew Tessman, a prosecutor who left the Justice Department this month. Sources with knowledge of the section's operation say that the reduction in staff means it can no longer advise the 94 U.S. attorneys' offices around the country on how to build cases against crooked government officials. This department is about going after government officials. And what did Trump do? Gutted it. Weaponizing it. That's why. So they can't even go after them, let alone prosecute new cases on its own. To protect against politically motivated abuses, the DOJ's Justice Manual has long required prosecutors and local U.S. attorneys' offices to consult with the public integrity section on any federal criminal matter that involves alleged or suspected violations of federal or state campaign financing laws, federal patronage crimes, or corruption of the election process. Oh, we're getting to that because they needed to gut this in order to do what they just did. Get to that in just a second. It says, but Trump's Department of Justice reversed the policy in June. Department leadership is currently revising this section. This part of the Justice Manual now says that the consultation requirement is suspended while revisions are ongoing. So he gutted the department that goes after corrupt government officials involved with the election process, which leads us to this. Just coming out yesterday, Trump says Republicans should take over voting in at least 15 places. So I always need to start off whenever we talk about this stuff right here. I always have to start off with this. First of all, we know there's no such thing as an election. We know it's selection. These people are handpicked and put in the places that they're supposed to be. You don't have a voice in this. Even though you continue to get told over and over and over again, go out and vote harder. It means nothing. It's the illusion of choice that they're giving you. So we have to start with that. Second of all, whenever it comes to election stuff, it's mind-numbing. It's just pure stupidity. But in this case, we need to talk about this because it appears, with a lot of stuff that's pointing in that direction, but we don't know for sure, but it appears they're getting ready to do something to make sure that the elections are never as they appeared to be before. We'll just put it that way, and I'll let you come up with your own conclusion after we go over this. Just yesterday, Trump says Republicans should take over voting in at least 15 places. President Donald Trump on Monday called on Republicans to take over the voting in at least 15 places. Trump claimed that these people were brought to our country to vote, criticizing Republicans for not being tougher in tamping down on illegal voting and calling the GOP to nationalize the voting. It's unclear what Trump meant by nationalize. We'll get to that in just a second because he clarified it today. But he's previously suggested that the federal government should take control of election administration from state governments. Oh my goodness. This is fascism to the core. But don't worry, while everybody's over there screaming communism, 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 we got fascism that's completely creeping through the entire country like a plague. Trump made the comments in an appearance on former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino's first podcast since he left the agency. He also claimed he won Minnesota 3 times. He lost Minnesota in all 3 presidential general elections he ran in, alleging it's a really rigged state with the Somalians and the theft. So making reference to that, referring to the welfare fraud investigation in Minnesota involving the same Somali community. Trump said you're going to see something in Georgia where they were able to get, with a court order, the ballots. Here comes the 2020 stuff again. You're going to see something interesting coming out. Trump was referring to an FBI raid at a Fulton County, Georgia election office last week seeking 2020 ballots. He has not given up on it, and I think he's about to use that to pull something. The Trump campaign forced a 3rd recount of ballots in the 2020 election in Georgia and pressured state officials not to certify the results, showing Biden won by 12,000 votes. Trump then lost multiple legal challenges in the state attempting to overturn the results. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard was spotted at the FBI raid in Fulton County last week, raising questions why she was there since her role focuses on national security. The reason why she's there is because they're going to pull some stunt where it says an international group came in and altered stuff. That's why she's there. Trump told reporters over the weekend Gabbard is working very hard on trying to keep the election safe. Unnamed officials told the Wall Street Journal Gabbard is probing potential foreign interference in the 2020 election. Foreign interference in the 2020 election. Trump in recent months has started to more frequently mention his false claims that he won the 2020 election and regularly blames illegal immigration for skewing elections results towards the Democrats. Again, we know that was, at this point, I hope you know, but we talk about and we've shown that the 2020 election, of course, like all other elections, is rigged, but they did this one specifically with some fire around it in order to build something up for the Biden and then the next Trump thing after that. This is all a plan. And it's not crazy to think in that way because it's very simple to get it done. So since winning the 2024 election, Trump has used the powers of the presidency to reinvestigate the 2020 election and pardon dozens of allies who were convicted of trying to override Biden's win. His administration has demanded voter rolls from nearly every state, and the District of Columbia has sued jurisdictions, including Fulton County, that have failed to comply. So today, he was asked about what he meant by that. Let's hear from him himself about what he meant by nationalize the elections.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections, and which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest, and if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta, look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
Oh boy. Are you guys seeing it yet? Are you guys starting to see the possible path that they're about to take in regards to this? So you orchestrate the 2020 election to appear supremely rigged, which if you actually look at it just from just a general standpoint, if you look at the numbers and how many votes Biden and stuff got, it's just absurd. It really is. So they made it as obvious as possible, which then started the political fire and then the whole chaos of Biden. And then Trump was already planned to go in the next time, which means he can then start going against this. And so now he can use 2020 in order to nationalize elections, to allow the federal government to take the rights away from the states, how it's supposed to be, and they can control it entirely from the federal government, which means there's no need for all the display anymore. And it's one of those things where elections can just poof, be gone. Similar to how they have it in Russia, and similar to how they have it in China, and similar to how they have it in North Korea. Oh, that's right. All the places that Trump looks up to. And so that leads us to the raid that just took place last week. It says FBI agents spend hours searching Fulton County election facility. It says federal agents carried out a law enforcement action, later confirmed as a sealed search warrant on Wednesday at the central Fulton County election facility. Multiple law enforcement vehicles and agents were seen at the county's election hub and operations center, a site that opened in 2023 to centralize and modernize election operations. Photojournalist with Fox 5 Atlanta observed agents outside the building as activity unfolded. Shortly after, FBI Atlanta confirmed agents were executing a court-authorized action at the facility's address on Campbellton Fairburn Road. Spokesperson then told Fox 5 Atlanta that the FBI was there to conduct an active seal search warrant. A source told Fox 5 Atlanta that the FBI was there to take custody of Fulton County election ballots from 2020. Fulton County officials confirmed the search to Fox 5 Atlanta. Spokesperson issued a written statement that said, today, the FBI served a search warrant at the Fulton County Elections Hub and Operations Center. The warrant sought a number of records related to 2020 elections. This operation is still actively underway. We cannot provide further information at this time. The Associated Press reports that sources told them that the FBI moved to replace its top agent at Atlanta, Paul W. Brown. So they took the top FBI dude of the Atlanta branch, kicked him out before they went in and did this. It was not immediately clear why the move, which was not publicized by the FBI, was made. We're still not sure why they kicked him out ahead of time, so I don't have an answer for you on that one. County officials also addressed the raid later in the afternoon. Councilwoman Mo Ivory referred to this as a scare tactic in an election year. Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr. said that the sealed criminal warrant comes after failed attempts by the Department of Justice to subpoena the ballots through civil lawsuits. Fulton County's election process has been at the center of scrutiny and public debate in recent years, starting with the trouble in 2020, resulting in then former President Trump and 18 supporters being indicted for election interference by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. The case was ultimately dismissed against Trump and the supporters who had not already taken in a deal after Trump was reelected, and Willis was disqualified because of her relationship with the former special prosecutor assigned to the case. Former special counsel Jack Smith told lawmakers on January 22nd, all this is going on. Jack Smith, who looked into the whole Trump-Russia collusion, he's been dealing with Congress stuff, and then this is on top of it. They are clearly setting up for something. Special counsel Jack Smith told lawmakers on January 22nd that Georgia sat at the center of his now dismissed federal investigation in efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election, repeatedly describing the state as ground zero for alleged criminal conduct. Smith testified for several hours before the House Judiciary Committee, defending that the integrity of his probe, and said that the evidence in the case was built largely on actions and statement from Republican officials in Georgia. So we got a little background of what's going on. So we know the 2020 situation, and now we've got this raid all of a sudden on Trump's second term where they're trying to get this information with not only national security, but also putting in a person who is involved with the whole international or foreign interference situation. At the same time, they're trying to go after Jack Smith, who was investigating the whole Trump involvement with all these things. And then we have a raid, an FBI raid at Georgia facility in order to capture ballots, which can, quote unquote, prove everything. We're starting to see that this was definitely planned, and they're moving forward with it. And along with that, it says Trump posts discredited conspiracy theories following seizure of 2020 ballots in Georgia. I don't know if anybody has ever looked into these theories that people have come up in regards to the 2020 thing, but there's some whacked out ideas, and some of them come from the whole Q community. Don't worry, that'll pop up again in just a second. It says, in the hours after FBI agents seized 2020 election ballots from an elections facility in Georgia on Wednesday, Trump posted a series of thoroughly discredited conspiracy theories about the 2020 presidential election and the 2016 election as well. Fulton County officials said Wednesday that the FBI seized original 2020 voting records while serving a search warrant at the county's elections hub and operations center. The FBI said that they were conducting court-authorized activities at the facility, but said that they would provide no information. And late Wednesday night, the president reposted to his social media platform a claim that Italian military satellites had been used to hack into U.S. voting machines to flip votes from Trump to Joe Biden. Italian military satellites used to hack into U.S. voting machines. That's what Trump posted on his social media. He also posted, China reportedly coordinated the whole operation. The post reads, the CIA oversaw it, the FBI covered it up, all to install Biden as a puppet. Using Italian military satellites. This is only the beginning, Trump said, reposting other posts about the FBI's action in Georgia. Prosecutions are coming. Oh, like the time and you said over and over and over again that you're going to lock up Hillary? Yeah, how's that working? Among the statements posted and reposted by Trump following the FBI's actions in Georgia is one on the 2016 election that falsely claims that Barack Hussein Obama falsified intelligence and conspired with foreign powers, not one, not two, not three, but 4 times to overthrow the United States government in 2016. Now, most people would probably go, yeah, for sure. Because it's Barack Obama, and we know how evil Barack Obama is. The only problem with that is the claim ignores the fact that Obama was president in 2016. So if he tried to overthrow the government, he would have been overthrowing himself. Need I say more? Conspiracy theory about Italian military satellites is not new. In 2021, then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows directed both the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense to look into the matter. The conspiracy theory was brought to the White House by a woman. And this is true. I looked it up. I looked into this because I could not believe it when I saw it. But it's true. The conspiracy theory was brought to the White House by a woman who went by several aliases, including the Heiress and was known at the Pentagon for her claimed ties to Somali pirates. Somali. The same people Trump is doing the fraud thing with Minnesota. She passed her material off to a National Security Council official at a supermarket parking lot in Arlington, Texas. The Italian, these have to be ridiculous in order for all of these theatrics to work. Don't be surprised. And I'm just telling you, don't be surprised if all of a sudden they find something that proves it all true, which will then require them to nationalize the election. And you're going to get a huge resurgence of support back behind Trump again. This ain't going to be good. Says the Italian spy satellite theory was just one of many unsubstantiated allegations made about the 2020 election by Trump and his supporters. At a Trump campaign press conference in November 2020, lawyer Sidney Powell, I told you we'd be going to Q again. Sidney Powell infamously claimed that the voting machines had been rigged using software that was created at the direction of Hugo Chavez. This was an especially extravagant claim because Chavez, the former leader of Venezuela, had died 3 years earlier. Just throwing something out there, something to think about. I don't know for sure, but just something to think about, to hold on to. With the action that just took place in Venezuela to capture Maduro. And then we know the involvement of Tulsi Gabbard, who's about foreign interference. There's a chance that they may blame the 2020 election situation on Maduro. Just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. In 2023, Powell pleaded guilty to state charges of conspiracy to commit international interference with performance of election duties in Georgia and agreed to serve 6 years of probation to pay a $6,000 fine. And now it appears that Sidney Powell is back. In a post on X Thursday morning, Department of Justice official Ed Martin posted a picture of himself with Powell writing, "Good morning, America. How are ya?" Ed Martin, connected to the Department of Justice, the morning of the FBI raid, is standing there with Sidney Powell. And they're saying, "Good morning, America." Here we go. I told you it's mind-numbing. So let's talk about Ed Martin. Who's Ed Martin? Trump's weaponization czar vows to expose government abuses and hold people accountable. The new Department of Justice official claims almost every area of American life was targeted in the last 4 years. President Donald Trump has tasked the Department of Justice weaponization czar. By the way, this is May 21st, 2025. That he was named this. President Donald Trump has tasked the Department of Justice weaponization czar Ed Martin with publicly exposing government abuses allegedly performed under previous administrations, and for Martin, getting to the bottom of it is necessary. That includes 2020 election. Says the former interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, that's Ed Martin, explained that Attorney General Pam Bondi delivered a memorandum on her first day, tasking him and others with unearthing the truth. Martin said FBI Director Kash Patel and FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino have a hard job to do going through the internals of the Bureau. Martin's role will more specifically examine the Trump-Russian collusion narrative and hold those responsible to account. At the same time, he says that the traditional statute of limitations argument may be able to be bypassed if an ongoing series of acts is involved. As weaponizations are, Martin also intends to scrutinize former President Joe Biden's controversial pardons. In his word, were something we've never seen in history. Oh, we've seen it now. We've gone over the pardons that Trump has done. Need I say more? So he's leaving a weaponization board, which is basically, it's defined as going after those who weaponized the Department of Justice against them. But ultimately what's going on is this is a weapon against those who oppose Trump. Let's keep going. The RNC hires a prominent Stop the Steal advocate to help craft its 2024 platform. Ed Martin, who was hired by the RNC in May, pushed to overturn Donald Trump's 2020 loss and marched outside the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. And this is the dude that posted a picture of him and Sidney Powell on the day of the FBI raid in Fulton. So this news is January 7th, 2024. The Republican National Committee has hired a prominent supporter of the pro-Trump Stop the Steal movement, which has since fueled conspiracy theories about the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol to help craft its 2024 party platform. Ed Martin, a former chair of the Missouri Republican Party, was a major proponent of former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss. He gave a speech to Trump supporters in Washington on the eve of the Capitol attack, calling on diehard true Americans to work until their last breath to stop the steal, according to a video posted on social media. On the morning of January 6, Martin attended Trump's speech near the White House before joining the crowd and marching to the Capitol and posting about it on social media. Capitol video surveillance footage published by the House Republicans show him arriving on the grounds at around 2:20 p.m. By that time, Trump backers had already broken through police lines and stormed the building itself in an attempt to block Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's victory. Again, the same Christians and the same pastors and the prophecy people and stuff like that that continue to point to what's going on with the left and the left and the left and the left are the same people that support and advocate and endorse this, the January 6th thing, which was also completely orchestrated. We've talked about how Trump was involved with that. Ed Martin's involved with that. Both of the Flynn brothers were involved with it, one on the inside, one on the outside. And they're orchestrating this whole event where they go in and it was a riot, breaking into the Capitol on government grounds, and so on and so forth. It's interesting because those same people say that Ashley Babbitt was shot in cold blood and never should have died, are the same people that are saying Alex Preddy deserved to get what he did because of what he was out doing. Well, you say that Alex Preddy should have stayed home. Maybe Ashley Babbitt should have stayed home too. And I'm not trying to be, controversial. I'm not trying to be cold or anything. I'm just being honest. Why is one justified in the other, even though it shows your hypocrisy? Goes on to say Trump is anchoring his 2024 bid on the false claim that the election was stolen from him, dangling pardons for January 6 rioters and vowing retribution against his political foes, even floating imprisoning them if elected. A little bit more on Ed Martin. It says Ed Martin, advocate for January 6 defendants, named DC's interim U.S. attorney overseeing Capitol riot cases. The conservative activist was on the board of the Patriot Freedom Project, which advocated for Capitol riot defendants. This is January 20th, 2025. Conservative activist who has been on the board of a group supporting January 6 defendants has been named interim U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C., the position that has overseen the hundreds of cases brought to the Capitol siege in the Capitol siege investigation. Ed Martin will be the interim chief. It says on January 6, Martin tweeted that he was at the Capitol and said that the crowd was rowdy but nothing out of hand. And he then tweeted, like Mardi Gras in D.C. today, love, faith, and joy. So basically what he's saying is it's a mostly peaceful protest. The same thing that we saw with the BLM stuff. He's saying that there's nothing getting out of hand. So it's a mostly peaceful protest, according to Ed Martin. At the time of Martin's tweet, rioters had breached the building and Ashley Babbitt had been shot. On the other side of the Capitol, a January 6 rioter would soon drive a stun gun into an officer's neck during the brutal battle over the Lower West Tunnel. Martin was on board of the Patriot Freedom Project, which advocated for January 6 defendants and helped fundraisers at Donald Trump's properties, including events where Trump spoke. Last year, Martin was named the Deputy Policy Director of the Republican National Policy Council. We're starting to get a better idea of who Ed Martin is. Well, he's involved with what happened at Fulton County, along with Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell, even though Trump is still trying to work and overturn the 2020 stuff, Sidney Powell pleads guilty over efforts to overturn Trump's loss in Georgia and agrees to cooperate. Lawyer Sidney Powell, this was October 19, 2023. Lawyer Sidney Powell pleaded guilty to reduced charges Thursday over efforts to overturn Donald Trump's loss in 2020 election in Georgia. So that's why she's involved, because she was specifically involved with the Georgia situation, even though she pleaded guilty to 6 charges. She pleaded guilty to 6 charges. She's back with the Trump administration to try and overturn 2020 with the raid for ballots in Georgia, the same place that she was before. And she has become the second defendant in the sprawling case to reach a deal with prosecutors. Powell, who was charged alongside Trump and 17 others with violating the state's anti-racketeering law, entered the plea just a day before jury selection was set to start in her trial. She pleaded guilty to 6 misdemeanors, accusing her of conspiring to intentionally interfere with election duties. As part of the deal, she served 6 years probation and was fined $6,000, and she'll have to write an apology letter to Georgia and its residents, so on and so forth. Powell's only comments in court came in response to routine questions from prosecutor Daisha Young and the judge. Powell was solemn and succinct when Young asked, "How do you plead to the 6 counts of conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties?" And Powell said, "Guilty." This is somebody who was at ground zero of these allegations and a lawyer who was pleading guilty. Fishwick also said Powell's plea is helpful to Jack Smith again, the Justice Department special counsel. Powell gained notoriety for threatening in Fox Business interview in November 2022, "Release the Kraken." There's the cue. Sidney Powell was one of the main people involved with the whole Q movement that, Trump is playing 4D chess, and they need to release the Kraken, which was a code word for this giant lawsuit that Sidney Powell was going to bring forward to prove that the election was stolen and that Trump was still in control, and it was a military operation, and he was going to come in and with the military and arrest everybody that was involved with it and reclaim his spot in the White House, and then the Great Awakening was going to happen and stuff. That's all that Q movement. Sidney Powell was one of the main people involved with it. And that "Release the Kraken" was the code word, the lawsuit that was all of a sudden going to flip everything. She's back. She's back involved with this. And they're going after the 2020 elections again. And guess what I'm starting to see more and more of all of a sudden? Starting to see a lot more Q talk again. Q never went away. They just went quiet. Now, all of a sudden, they're starting to get loud again. So Jack Smith, this is January 22nd of this year. So this last month. Trump engaged in criminal activity, Jack Smith says at Capitol Hill testimony. Says in his public testimony about the criminal investigations of Donald Trump, former special counsel Jack Smith said the president was responsible for the violence on January 6, 2021. And it says Smith told a congressional committee that he believed his team had proof beyond a reasonable doubt that enough evidence to win convictions against Trump in both cases they had prosecuted. One into Trump's alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election, and the other into accusations that he illegally retained classified documents after leaving the White House the first time. You guys remember the picture of the bathroom in Mar-a-Lago with stacks of classified documents? Yeah. Trump pleaded not guilty in both cases, which were dropped once he returned to the White House last year. Theater, timing, orchestration, theater. I hope you guys are seeing it. It's right there. This is what I want you guys to pay attention to going forward. Jack Smith expects Trump to continue to target him. This is how we can kind of see what's going on. If Jack Smith continues to get ran through the media and Trump continues to go after Jack Smith and Jack Smith's, able to evade it, and there's this giant, legal battle that continues to get pushed through the news and everything, this is all theater and Jack Smith's involved with it. If Jack Smith all of a sudden just disappears, then we know Jack Smith actually did have some stuff and they had to get rid of him. So pay attention to see if the theater continues with Smith or if he just disappears, because that will tell you a lot of what's actually going down when it comes to the things that he supposedly found. Now, we talked about this. This was October, and I brought this up, and I had a few people that says, why are you even talking about this? Who cares? This is pointless. We know elections are rigged, so on and so forth. I said, be careful, because there's a reason why Trump is continuing to hire the 2020 people that were trying to overturn it and continues to place them in his administration. And this is exactly why we pay attention to those nuggets. It says Trump empowers election deniers still fixated on the 2020 grievances. This was October of last year. We covered it. It says the woman filling a newly created Trump administration position is Heather Honey. Newly created Trump administration position, Heather Honey. And Honey, a leader in that movement of the 2020 overturn movement, until her appointment in August as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Election Integrity. So she was somebody, Heather Honey was involved with trying to overturn the 2020 election. And so when Trump came into office, he hired Honey for a new position as the Deputy Assistant Assistant Secretary for Election Integrity. He was trying to plan ahead for what we're starting to see now. It says Miss Honey also repeatedly mentioned a report often cited by election conspirators to support their claims that voting machines were rigged to favor Democrats. We'll get to that later. It says in the past few months, Trump has elevated multiple proponents of his fraud claims into high-level administration jobs. Now, as the government insiders, these activists could wield their newfound power to discredit future results or rekindle old claims to argue for a federal intrusion into locally administered voting systems. We're starting to see that they're building up for something. On a call with right-wing activists in March before her appointment to Homeland Security Department, Ms. Honey suggested that the new administration could declare, she said this in March before getting involved with election integrity for Trump. She said that the new administration could declare a national emergency and justify dictating new rules to state and local governments. What did Trump just say yesterday? Nationalize the elections. She said that this could be based on an actual investigation of the 2020 election if it showed that there had been manipulation of the vote. And therefore, we have some additional powers that don't exist right now, she said in March, according to a recording reviewed by the New York Times from someone who joined the call. And therefore, we can take these other steps without Congress, and we can mandate that states do things and so on. take steps without Congress and mandate that states do these things. Fascism. The idea of reinvestigating the 2020 election gained steam recently with the White House's decision to hire Kurt Olson, a lawyer who has been tasked with examining the 2020 vote and other election matters, according to the White House official. The hiring of Mr. Olson, who has worked closely for years with the Pillow entrepreneur Mike Lindell to promote stolen election theories, was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. Another activist, Marcy McCarthy, who spread debunked claims about voting machines in Georgia when she was the chairwoman of the DeKalb County Republican Party, was named in May to be the director of public affairs at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, which is housed at the Homeland Security Department. Ms. McCarthy's appointment comes as nearly all of the election experts at CISA have been placed on administrative leave or reassigned this year amid a large-scale downsizing of the agency, which had played a leading role in deterring attacks on election systems and combating disinformation about voting. You cannot write a better script. And the thing is, and I hope you guys are seeing it, I hope you guys are seeing how perfectly pieced together this is. We are not forcing a triangle peg into a circle hole right now. We are literally following step by step, piece by piece, how this is being constructed right in front of our very eyes. These are those little nuggets that I constantly tell you guys about. They may be boring, or they may look like they don't fit in anything when we discuss them. But this is why we discuss them, because we are seeing these things piece by piece come together, and the picture is so obvious. And if this plays out like it appears to be building towards, you're not going to be caught off guard. You're not going to fall for the narrative. You're not going to be surprised. You're going to sit there and go, yep, saw it coming. While everybody else is going to be going, you're going to be sitting there cool as a cucumber because you saw it coming. This is why we don't follow narratives. This is why we don't get caught up in trying to pick a side. This is why we sit up in the bleachers with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, watching it all play out, paying attention to the little nuggets that are being put together. And so we are doing our job as watchmen. We're not calling in calling about the enemy that's already in the walls and everything like that. We're paying attention to the enemy that's out in the distance, and we're sounding the alarm, and we're using that as encouragement, and we're using that as the ability to use it as a witnessing tool to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. We are not being caught off guard, and we are doing exactly what the Lord wants us to do. So hang with it. Let's get to the voting machines, shall we? Okay, let's get to the voting machines. Former Dominion employee, this is April 11th, 2024. Former Dominion employee defamation suit against Trump campaign can continue. So anybody remember the name Coomer? You guys remember that name? Colorado Court of Appeals has decided that a defamation lawsuit against the Trump campaign and other conservative groups from a former employee of Denver-based Dominion Voting Systems can move forward. Eric Coomer was Dominion's Director of Product Strategy and Security. He sued for defamation defamation after he found himself at the center of conspiracies alleging that he personally rigged the 2020 presidential election for Joe Biden. He was forced into hiding after receiving death threats. And on December 22nd, 2020, Coomer sued the Trump campaign, several campaign surrogates, and pro-Trump media outlets. On Wednesday, the court ruled Coomer's case could move forward because he established a reasonable likelihood of success on his claims for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Prominent Trump supporters tried to dismiss the case under Colorado's anti-SLAPP statute. The statute allows a court to throw out meritless defamation cases if defendants can show that they were exercising the constitutional right to free speech and petition the government. Coomer is suing the defamation based on claims that centered on a supposed Antifa call prior to the 2020 election, presidential election, in which a man named Eric said he made sure then President Donald J. Trump would not win the election. Okay. Actually, we'll read this part, and then I'll tell you why this is important. Considering each defendant's statements separately, we conclude that each defendant made statements that could reasonably be understood to communicate that, one, Coomer asserted on a conference call that he made sure that President Trump was not going to win the election, and two, Coomer in fact took steps to interfere with the election. The court concluded that Coomer presented sufficient evidence to show those statements were false and that defendants made them with actual malice. Okay. Why this is important for right now? Because there's been a court document that has just come out a week or 2 weeks ago. It was at the end of January that this came out. There's Coomer versus Byrne. And I'll try and make this as quick and simple as possible, but this is important for what we just saw with 2020 in Fulton. Coomer versus Byrne. Byrne is the CEO, or was the CEO of Overstock. He's friends with Mike Lindell. And Byrne is saying he's the one that's doing a lawsuit against Coomer, that Coomer under oath said that he did communicate with foreign programmers about the algorithms used in Dominion voting machines during the 2020 election. And that's the big thing that came out. And so all of the people who are, all the people, the MAGA group that is attached to the 2020 election situation are saying, there's the smoking gun, there's the proof of what's going on. And Trump is using that in order to overturn it or prove it, however you want to look at it. The only problem, though, is from what I've looked up, is Coomer, under oath, said that he talked to programmers about the code and the algorithm that was used for Dominion voting machines with Serbian programmers. The Serbian programmers are the programmers that work for the Dominion company in Serbia. Now, whether you think that voting machines should be in foreign places anyways, that's not the conversation we're having. They're saying that because he talked to, even though they're in the same company that works for the company that he does, they're saying that because they're Serbian, that was validation that he helped overturn the election for Joe Biden. Then on top of that, it's talking about Coomer being on a conference call with Antifa saying that he rigged the election. Where that comes from is, first of all, they claim that Antifa has conference calls. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm buying that one, but if they do, okay, I'll give you that one. I'm not sure I buy it, but we'll go with that. Where this notion is coming from is the guy who claims it, Altman. I can't remember the dude's exact name. You guys can look it up. He works for Mike Lindell. He claims that he received an email with a link to join the Antifa conference call where he heard Eric Coomer say that he was rigging the voting machines for Joe Biden. The problem is Altman can't provide the email that had the link, can't provide the link itself to the conference call, didn't record the conference call, even though his whole goal was to go in and investigate. He wasn't prepared to record it. And the only proof that he had that Eric Coomer said those things on an Antifa call that he claimed that he got, that he was a part of, is handwritten notes by himself. So it's a whole thing that doesn't fit. But because of the latest under oath thing that Coomer said about Serbian programmers who worked with the Dominion department, that's what they're going with. And so they may pull this out and use this for the future. That's why I wanted to go over that. Plus, we have jury finds MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, defamed former executive Denver-based Dominion Voting Machines. Federal jury has found that businessman Mike Lindell defamed Eric Coomer, former employee of Denver-based Dominion Voting Machines, and is ordering him to pay roughly $2.3 million in damages. That amount falls short of the $62.7 million award requested by Coomer, in part because the jury rejected a number of claims that Lindell and two of his companies, MyPillow and Frank Speech, were responsible for comments made by other platforms that were controlled. So we have that. Then we have this. We covered this as well, but we need to go over it again because of what this may lead to. Republican buys Dominion voting systems, forces them to drop lawsuits against conservatives. Dominion voting systems have been acquired by founder and chairman of Liberty Vote, Scott Leiendecker, in a deal which included dropping lawsuits against conservatives. This was October 9th, 2025. Leiendecker, former GOP election reform advocate, has officially become the sole owner of Dominion after making a deal contingent on dropping several remaining lawsuits against prominent conservatives and One American News Network. So Dominion Voting Machines has now been bought out by Scott Leiendecker of Liberty Vote, who is a GOP election reform advocate. He bought them and then dropped the lawsuits, defamation lawsuits, against all those who were talking about the 2020 election. Leiendecker further disclosed to the caller that remaining litigation with MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and former Trump campaign attorney Sidney Powell will be dropped by Dominion Voting Systems as part of the acquisition agreement. Again, can you guys see the piece by piece? Each of these pieces are starting to come together. It's building a puzzle of a giant picture. Dominion also filed a lawsuit against Herring Networks, which owns OANN, in August of 2021. That lawsuit remained unresolved, though Leiendecker further confirmed that future litigation will be discontinued following the acquisition. The Liberty Vote will be inheriting ongoing litigation with former Overstock.com CEO Patrick Byrne. Remember Byrne and Comer that we just talked about? There we go. It also says since 2020 election, Dominion has launched several major defamation lawsuits, including a $1.3 billion case against Lindell, accusing him of spreading false claims about the company's role during the 2020 presidential election to boost his pillow sales. The company filed a $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit against Powell over what Dominion describes as wild accusations that it rigged the 2020 election for Joe Biden. Dominion has also filed a separate $1.3 billion lawsuit against Giuliani, a close ally of Trump, alleging he repeatedly promoted baseless claims about Dominion being rigged for Joe Biden. Newsmax Media Inc. reached a $67 million settlement with Dominion in August in relation to its defamation lawsuit over the outlet's alleged defamatory coverage of Dominion regarding the 2020 presidential election, and the company previously reached a $787.5 million settlement with Fox News, who agreed to pay the voting software company in April of 2023. If anybody knows anything about that lawsuit, the reason why Fox paid such a huge price is because Murdoch didn't want his private files to go to light during discovery, so he just paid, so he didn't have his private dealings, which we know Murdoch is a bad dude. Okay. Scott Leiendecker. Who is this? Scott Leiendecker, the man who bought Dominion. Let's see a little bit about this guy, shall we? If we go down here, right here. Oh my goodness. When Leiendecker was appointed director, the Board of Elections Committee was chaired by Ed Martin, who currently serves as the Department of Justice U.S. Pardon Attorney and Director of Weaponization Working Group. Martin and Leindecker's career overlapped for a year, but their acquaintance came in play again in 2010 when Martin ran for U.S. Congress from Missouri's 3rd Congressional District and contested the election results out of St. Louis. So Leiendecker became a valuable member in election reform efforts. And in 2025, he had been elected, Blunt, who was elected governor, appointed Leiendecker to be the Republican director of St. Louis City's Board of Election Commissioner. And who was the head of that board? It was Ed Martin. Yes, the very same Ed Martin who was working on the 2020 election overturn. He was the one that teamed up with Sidney Powell for the Fulton raid that just took place, and he was the one that was a part of January 6th and defending the people involved. Well, it just so happens that that very same guy is worked with the guy who just bought Dominion voting machines in October. Now, what's important about this is they both worked with the election committee in Missouri. Why is that important? Because Bondi hands St. Louis prosecutor nationwide election fraud remit. The St. Louis-based U.S. attorney overseeing the FBI search warrant executed in Fulton County's election office Wednesday received a special appointment by Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate election integrity cases nationwide. Thomas Albus, the Trump-appointed chief prosecutor in the Eastern District of Missouri, appeared on the FBI court's approved warrant rather than the U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Georgia that enabled agents to seize records from Atlanta government building at the center of the president's discredited 2020 election conspiracy. So Pam Bondi hands the ability to sign a search warrant for Fulton County, Georgia 2020 election ballots to a chief prosecutor in Missouri who's also connected to Ed Martin, who worked at the election board in Missouri, who was connected to Sidney Powell and the Fulton raid, and just so happens to also work with Scott Leiendecker, who just bought Dominion voting machines. Just to confirm, the warrant used in the FBI search of Fulton County's elections office listed Thomas Albus, the interim U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Missouri, as the attorney for the government on the document, but it was also signed by a federal magistrate judge, not by Albus, and the FBI later obtained the correct warrant that listed Albus as the government attorney. Piece by piece. Body cam footage exposes messy FBI raid in Georgia elections office. The FBI raid of Fulton County, Georgia elections office last week confused local authorities and caused a dispute despite the FBI possessing a judicial search warrant. Body cam footage from Fulton County Police reveals that officials at the Fulton County Election Hub and Operations Center were not clear on what was going on and expressed confusion about the warrant, which was shown to them on their phones instead of as a hard copy. FBI agents on camera told the officials that they were having computer problems and trying to get an updated warrant. The agents said that when the warrant was first issued, they didn't realize that the records that they were seeking from the 2020 presidential election weren't held in the county elections board, but the clerk of courts. Why this is important? Because the first warrant that was issued not only gave the wrong spot that they were allowed to search for the 2020 ballots, but it was also not signed by the correct person. So they had to get a different warrant that showed the correct spot and was signed by the right person in order for it to work. So that was a gigantic flub anyways. Then on top of that, we got the Gabbard situation. It says the director for national intelligence is leading an administration-wide effort to hunt for proof of tampering in the election that Trump lost. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has spent months investigating the results of the 2020 election that Donald Trump lost, according to White House officials, a role that took her to a related FBI search of an election center in Georgia on Wednesday. Again, the only reason why Tulsi Gabbard would be involved with this because her department has nothing to do with investigating things in the United States has to do with foreign interference is because they're looking to spin it to a foreign spot. That Maduro thing is interesting, but again, they could go anywhere that they want with this. Again, Italian military satellites. The National Intelligence Director is usually focused on ensuring the president has the best intelligence available to make national security decisions. Gabbard has been sidelined from some of these deliberations, including the Venezuela options earlier this month. She has begun studying information about voting machines, analyzed data from swing states, and pursued theories that Trump has promoted about the 2020 election, particularly on foreign government interference. She has regularly briefed Trump and Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, we'll get to that in just a second, about her inquiry in recent months along the lines, along with others involved in the investigation. Those include senior Justice Department officials, Trump's outside ally and lawyer Cleta Mitchell, and there's Kurt Olson, again, a lawyer who pushed claims in 2020 that the election was stolen. Gabbard has consulted with others in the intelligence community about claims of foreign interference in the 2020 election, the official said, though she hasn't provided the public with new evidence of it. Keep in mind, and I want to reiterate this was also reported October of last year, so just a few months ago. Pentagon readying thousands of Guard reaction forces as U.S. mission widens. Up to 23,000 service members are being readied and trained for civil unrest missions in the United States. The Pentagon has ordered thousands of specialized National Guard personnel to complete civil unrest mission training over the next several months, an indication that the Trump administration's effort to send uniformed military forces into urban centers, once reserved for extraordinary emergencies, could become the norm. An existing separate but similar structure, the National Guard Reaction Force, is expected to complete civil unrest training and fully operational by April 1st of this year. The total size of the force will be 23,500 troops across all 50 states and 3 territories, excluding the District of Columbia, the documents say. Most states will supply 500 personnel for the reaction force, and those forces are typically used for emergencies like disaster relief, not on-call troops for civil unrest. So keep that in mind. We also have this, which is actually reveals quite a bit. Trump had unusual call with FBI agents after election center search. Tulsi Gabbard and the director of national intelligence brokered the call, and President Trump directly questioned frontline agents on the inquiry. So Tulsi Gabbard was there, put her call on speakerphone, so the president, Trump, could speak directly with the leaders of the FBI in the Fulton County search. This doesn't happen. This shows that it's not an independent investigation. This shows that Trump is actually calling the shots on the investigation. And behind closed doors, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, met with some of the same FBI agents, members of the Bureau field office in Atlanta, which is conducting the election inquiry. 3 people with knowledge of the meeting said they could not say why Ms. Gabbard, who also appeared on site at the search, was there, but her continued presence has raised eyebrows, given that her role overseeing the nation's intelligence agencies does not include on-site involvement in criminal investigative work. What occurred during the meeting was even further outside the bounds of normal law enforcement procedure. Ms. Gabbard used her cell phone to call Trump, who did not initially pick up but called back shortly after. The president addressed the agents on the speakerphone, asking them questions, as well as praising and thanking them for their work for the inquiry. The supervisor of the squad, which investigates the allegations of the public corruption and civil rights violations and developed the evidence for the search, primarily fielded Trump's queries. Then, immediately following the raid in Fulton County, Justice Department demotes Ed Martin. Martin will no longer head the Justice Department task force for pushed investigations in the Trump foes. So they brought him in to move forward with this, and then immediately following, he gets removed. Top Justice Department officials have stripped Ed Martin of the bulk of his expansive responsibilities. leaving the staunch ally of President Trump on the sidelines of many controversial investigations he has championed for. As a result, the changes, Martin will no longer chair the department's weaponization working group, which was tasked with reviewing special counsel Jack Smith's prosecutions of Trump and other perceived examples of prosecutorial abuse. According to the people who spoke on condition of being anonymous, Martin will continue to serve as the Justice Department's pardon attorney, but will no longer work at the Justice Department headquarters. So take that with what you will as well.